here we go. New day, new camera angle, and it's actually Father's Day today. So, happy Father's Day out there to all you dads, especially you real good dads. I hope you're having your great day today. What am I doing? Actually, you know what we're going to do today? We're going to go into the big city, and I am going to treat myself to a new rifle scope for a rifle that I have, a 300. It's called a Ruger number 1. I've had it for years. Real cool gun, kind of heavy, but 300 Win Mag, Ruger number 1. I decided I'm going to use that gun to go up north this year when elk season starts, and then we'll grab I got a friend who's got a metal detector. I'm going to borrow it off of him, and I'm going to use that metal detector to find the bolt to my 300 short mag once we get there. But I'll make sure that I have this rifle ready to go as backup. It's a single shot 300. I've shot some grizzly bears with it, actually. I've shot a lot of stuff with that gun. Good gun, and but it needs a scope because I donated the scope from it onto Sarah's new gun last year. Rambling. So that's what's going to happen this afternoon. We're going to go into town and find a scope for that gun. We might combo that up with getting the food for the kids from Costco today too. And what else? Got my firewood done. All you people that do your own firewood, I got it all done. It's done for the year. Feels good. It's all nicely stacked. Sarah came out. I split it, hand split it all, bucked it up and split it the past month when I had the odd moment. I got it all done. Sarah grew up having to do firewood with her brothers, so she hates it. So she came out and helped me stack it all up perfect yesterday. It just feels good. You know what I'm talking about. All you people who do your own firewood, it just feels good when it's all done, perfectly stacked. It looks great. It's just a little sense of satisfaction every time you walk by to glance at it, right? Got her done. Anyway, moving along. So I was digging in this morning, having my first coffee with Sarah in the house. I was digging through my emails, which are in the tens of thousands. And I found one. And for the life of me, I can't remember. I probably would immediately remember this person if I saw them because I've had so many people come up to me in public in the past. But I found an email. Listen to this. And it came with a recording and a video. The video is a couple of salmon, which is cool. I don't know if he mentions where I'm going to... Okay, all I'm going to tell you guys is this is very, very close to where I was previously living before I moved back to the island. That's all I'm going to say, all right? Because out of respect for this particular area where this man is, and another man and wife who were at the same place for a long time. They emailed me a lot of details of these beings they saw all the time, and it is as well where years ago the old guy who lived at this exact same place used to go up into the mountains behind here, this particular spot, and bring them food. And I went up there one time before I even knew they were doing all that or they'd even seen these people there. And I was looking intently back then. And I went up there. And I was basically I'll bet you I was 200 yards away from where I found out later on this man would bring them food to this open grassy patch inside his logging road, which is now deactivated. And they actually took the bridge out to get across the little washout to get around that mountain to where the spot is. And I was on my old Yamaha quad, and I'd gone to the end of this road. I was just putting together my own little puzzle pieces at that time. And I could hear something beating on the ground over top of my idling quad motor on an angle like this. Looking down, and there's a logged off area. Timberline was probably 70 yards down from the old logging road I was sitting on, and it was coming from in the forest right there. And of course, typical person looking for these people, got freaked right out, spun my quad around and took off. And at that zone where I had to take off back to was where my old girlfriend's house was, and she is the girl who had the Sasquatch running beside her car in the snowstorm looking in the window, her and her friend. Well, she lived right down there on that side of the valley. So here's where this happened. Down this side, downhill. When you finally make it out to pavement, was her rural home. Her and her brother and her mom had 3 houses on this particular rural property. And she's the one who had the old ancient antique camera left on her hiking trail behind her house. We can't get back there unless you go through these rural properties. Left it on her hiking trail she used to use to keep in shape. And her house as well had gotten beat on 10, 12 feet up the wall. It's a 2-level house. And a Rottweiler was shitting itself, crawling under the bed. Anyway. And then on this side, so if I'm facing, whatever, on top of the mountain where I had this go down the quad, and where the guy was feeding these people, down this slope is that valley, where it's paved road. Up and over the height of land, which isn't very far, straight down shot left, only about, man, I don't know, I'd have to look at it. I'll bet you 2 miles, 3 miles from where I was, is where my arrow was sticking in the snow straight up and down on top of 5 feet of snow when I lost it in the spring in that bear's butt. And what else had happened over there? The arrow was over there. The stand was on that side. You know, they're just saying ground zero. And this old guy who allegedly brought food to these people, he had a Polaroid of them. Clear enough that the other guy who I was speaking to, who's in the exact same place this man emailed from, him and his wife seen these people around this place numerous times. And he said that when he looked at the Polaroid, he goes, that's not the ones I'm seeing. You imagine having that detail etched in your head from I'm calling people, I don't give a shit what anybody says, forest people, to be able to see a Polaroid of one, or 2, 1, and then saying, nope, those aren't the people I saw. Those are different people. Crazy, right? Anyway, so this email came with a sound recording. And what's kind of not really exciting, but it's very interesting to me, because I don't know how many times we've heard people email in here before. How many times have people emailed in and said, it was the worst owl mimic I've ever heard. But definitely not an owl, and definitely something trying to mimic an owl in the darkness or even in daylight. This guy's got that on recording. I just heard it for the first time, and unfortunately this email is in 2021. And but at least I finally got it. And he said that he met up with me after I was eating lunch, saw my truck somewhere, probably in town. So anyway, regardless, what I'm trying to explain to you is, the majority of the people who've seen and had these experiences, where this man emailed from, were begged me not to say where. All right, so still out of respect for them, this particular zone, I'll try to leave out exactly where. But let's just say it's very, very close to where I was previously living in Pemberton. That's all you need to know anyway, right? But this particular zone does not need to be storm-trooped by a bunch of douches, that's for sure. All right, so, excuse me. So here's this email. First off, here's the original email, all right? This is back in April of 2021. Hey, Steve, Larry here. I apologize for interrupting your lunch a week ago. I recognized your truck from your videos and stopped by to yak a bit and introduce myself. Nice meeting you, and I like your no bullshit approach to everything, especially with what's going on in the world right now. Too bad more folks don't speak up for the truth on all levels. I've been voicing the truth lots over this past year and years as far as that goes, and I'm getting roasted from all sides, including family and friends, but, you know, onward through the fog. Right? Good for you, man. You've obviously spent lots of time in the bush and heard lots of different sounds of wildlife and birds. Perhaps you or others can help identify some of the calls in this recording. While having dinner outside at my cabin on September 15th at 9 p.m., I noticed what was an unprecedented amount of owl hooting coming from all around. Then a different bird call that I've never heard before in this part of the country. It sounded like an exotic bird or a monkey, something that you would probably, hear in a jungle documentary. So I grabbed my phone and started recording for almost 5 minutes. If there's a next time, I'll use my digital recorder to get a better recording. You might have to use headphones, as it appears some of the hoots are rather distant. There are more than a couple hooting at the same time, and there seems to be different tones. There is some background snapping noise that I'm making in the recording, and it's kind of loud. Sorry about that. I might have cracked a beer open there too, lol. A few weeks previous and late at night from across the lake, I heard some growling slash fighting slash sparring. Unfamiliar sounds from what I thought might be a couple of animals having a quarrel. It was kind of creepy and unnerving and still has me baffled as to what I was hearing. Never heard anything like it before, documentaries or real life. And this year I'll make a point to have my recorder a little handier to capture any more strange sounds like that. Go ahead and share the recording if it will help identify some of the sounds. Thanks for your time, Steve, and keep up the good work. Larry. All right, and then you sent me a video of 2 spawning salmon, which is freaking awesome. And a quick note from me at the end. Got it. Larry, I will be getting hold of you, without a doubt. And I apologize missing your email. But believe me, this happens to thousands of people, all right? So I hope you didn't get angry with me. Because lots of people get angry with me, too, for not getting their emails. Nothing I can do about it. I'm only a one-man show. But that was quite the recording for me personally to hear. I know recordings don't have much of an impact on people, but that recording for me let me know 110% that those people were talking about you and watching you. As usual, around that zone, it's all the time. It's all the time right there. And surrounding. And there's a lot of grizzly bears around there. A lot. Could you have heard a couple grizzlies at night? Yeah, maybe, probably. Well, not probably, but it's a possibility, but highly doubtful. Highly doubtful. But this recording, I mean, I know a lot of human beings in the South who mimic these owls way better than this. Now, let's listen. Listen to this. This is great. This is at nighttime. That's not an owl. How about that? That was great. For me, that was great. I was while listening to that, I'm almost wondering what the looks on their faces are as they're doing that, what they're doing. Now, any of you, especially you turkey hunters, you know as well as I do, that wasn't an owl. I know human beings that mimic that owl way better than that, especially at the tail end, because it goes, ooh, 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 ooh. Said no owl ever. It's always, ooh, 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 ooh. You know, I always have that ooh at the end. Always. But the secondary or primary sound, that I've been running around those mountains and forests right there for 20 years. More than 20 years. I've never heard that sound once in my life that he caught on recording there. I haven't a clue what that's supposed to be. I've never heard that sound ever. Never. And I've ran around this area for a long time. So anyways, that kind of made this recording for me. We get lots of recordings in, right? I've had so many recordings sent in, or you hear them online, and especially the wolf ones. I've heard so many people have made a big deal about these. Listen to these recordings. He's howling, and I listen to it. 100% wolf. I don't know how many times I've heard 100% wolf howling, and those recordings have been spread around the Bigfoot community like, listen to these Sasquatch howls. Nope, they're not. I'm just saying that a lot of recordings that I hear have never really got my attention like this one. Especially because this is where I am familiar with. I've ran around the woods, I don't know, almost full time. When I lived there, I did, at that time, those years, I spent probably, I figured it out, it was over 250 days a year I spent in the wilds of British Columbia. For I don't know how many years in a row. Because I would do 3 months up north, straight. And then I'd drive 2 days and come back here. And then I would go straight at it for October, November, December, 3 more months full-time deer hunting. And then after that, I would do the whole winter wolf trapping. Just to give you an idea, the amount of days I have spent and do spend in the woods. And I never heard that sound ever before in my life. Never. And those owls, I've heard, especially all my friends in the South, all my turkey hunters, you guys know what a good owl call is, and that was a shitty one. Right? Throw it down in the comment section below. Let me know what you think about my experienced turkey hunters, especially in the South. Let me know what you think about that owl call. I already know what you're going to say. How crazy is that? Anyway, apologies to the original emailer. Now, getting into more emails here. Mark this as read. 3 generations of experiences in one town. Dog hairs. Ugh. We've had a lot of titles that have been multiple generations or 3 generations. Or more. Or less. Hey Steve, thanks so much for what you're doing for people like me. People who have had something happen that they can't explain, but isn't believed by hardly anyone. Why try to share our trauma with? Sorry guys, let me just start that sentence again. People who have had something happen that they can't explain, but isn't believed by hardly anyone we try to share our trauma with, even our closest friends or loved ones. Yeah, it kind of sucks, doesn't it? I'd completely forgotten about my incident that took place when I was a child, as if it was erased from my memory. Years later, as an adult, I just happened to be looking at a website with Bigfoot reports. I won't mention the website, you know, those clowns. When I came across some Bigfoot recordings, I'd moved my elderly mother onto our property to help take care of her. She was on the couch while I was listening to the recordings, and I played the recorded Sasquatch screams from Snohomish, Washington. I almost passed out. My forgotten memory of over 25 years prior had flooded back into my mind, causing intense feelings and chills from my head to my toes. That was it. That was exactly what we heard that day. My mother asked what I was listening to. Joking with my mom a little bit, I said, What do you think it is? Laughing to myself at what her answer would be. And her answer made me almost fall out of my chair. She said, I know exactly what that is. When I was a child in the 1930s, that thing would come around the house at night during the summertime. It would start screaming and hollering, getting the hunting dogs all worked up. Your grandpa, a couple uncles, and a few cousins would get the guns and lanterns that would chase this thing through the woods all around the house. I would laugh because this thing was so fast it even outran the dogs, and they thought they could catch it. Holy blank, I was speechless. Okay, this sounds a little familiar. My own encounter took place in December of '79 in Kosciuszko, Mississippi, less than 6 miles away as the crow flies from where my mother had her experience growing up as a child. I was 10 years old. I need to start out by relaying what we found over a year prior to this incident. My family that now lives in this area lives deep in the woods, and at that time the nearest neighbor was 2 miles away, and the nearest paved road was almost 10 miles away. To say they were in the middle of the woods is an understatement. One summer while we were visiting, me and my two cousins were exploring the vast woods around their property. We came across an old abandoned shack. It looked like it had been abandoned for over 100 years. I remember the antique panes of glass in the windows being wavy, not smooth. Being young boys, our curiosity got the best of us. Since the house looked abandoned, we cautiously went inside. There was only 3 rooms in the house, and I remember in the kitchen, it still had the hand pump for the well where the sink was. What I remember the most about this house was that in the middle of the living room floor, it looked like a giant bird nest. It was made out of limbs and leaves and smelled horrible. When my cousins yelled, "It was a witch's house," we ran out of there as fast as we could. Fast forward Christmas time, '79. We were staying several days for Christmas at my uncle's house, which was about 3 miles from the old witch's house through the woods. Upon arrival, my uncle bragged to my dad that he had harvested several deer already this year. He told my dad of a pond about a mile from his house in the woods where deer gather in the evenings. Me and my dad suited up in our hunting gear, set out for a few hours before dark to see if we could find any deer heading to the pond. You have to walk down a red clay road following a barbed wire fence a little over half a mile from my uncle's house. When the barbed wire fence turns into woods, you follow it to that point 300 or 400 yards and the pond will be on your left. We made our way to the turning point and followed the fence into the woods, trying to be as quiet as possible. We made it all the way to the pond, but there were no deer in sight. We stayed until almost dark and started making our way back. Thinking back on it now, the woods were eerily quiet. And as we came out of the woods and turned left, following the barbed wire fence down the road again, I began to hear noises on the left side of the road about 30 feet into the woods. My dad was talking, and I was trying to focus on him, but kept hearing snaps and cracks of some very large limbs in the woods. Whatever this was sounded big. And after a little while, I began to realize these weren't 4-legged steps an animal would make, but they were the steps of a man on 2 legs. But they were the steps a man on 2 legs would make walking slowly through the woods, and it was stalking us. My dad had noticed it also and put his hand on my chest, forcing us to stop walking. He never said anything, as to not draw attention from our pursuer. But when we stopped, it took 1 or 2 more steps, and then it stopped. I then realized whatever this was could clearly see us at 30 feet away, but we couldn't see it. I remember the temperature being in the low teens, but because of my hunting clothes, I was very warm. And it wasn't until this very instant that a cold chill ran from my head to my toes, and all my hair stood straight up. My dad, noticing my obvious fear, leaned down toward me and asked me if I was afraid. I wanted to scream yes, but not wanting to disappoint my dad, I shook my head no. He asked me if I knew how to shoot the gun I was carrying, which was a 12-gauge shotgun loaded with buckshot. Since he taught me to shoot at an early age, the question was more to bolster my bravery than answer his inquiry. I said yes. He asked me if I could hit what I was aiming at. I said yes. He said then I have nothing to be afraid of. That might not be that good of advice from what we know now. Somehow that did not give me much comfort. We started walking again, and several times between there and my uncle's house, we stopped and started. And each time we would stop, whatever this was would also stop. Before you get to my uncle's house, the woods end of an old cornfield. We walked 40 or 50 feet past that point, stopped, turned, and faced the woods with my dad taking the 12 gauge. Whatever this was, walked right up to the wood line, and we heard it stop. We could see nothing inside the woods but darkness, but knew whatever it was just inside the woods, just inside the woods staring back at us. And after a minute or two, we turned and made our way back to my uncle's house. My uncle met us outside to inquire if we had any luck, and my dad said no, and started telling him of this thing following us out of the woods. And in the middle of his sentence, this thing started screaming. The only description I can give is of a woman being murdered, only multiplied the volume by 1,000. Holy shit, right? The description everybody says of these sounds, they get it across to us pretty good. That's intense. This thing was well over 100 yards away, and I could feel the volume in my chest. Now, to understand my fear, you have to understand who my dad and my uncle were. They were two men who grew up during the Great Depression. They spent most of their childhood and young adult life hunting in the woods and swamps in Mississippi, with coon hunting at night with lanterns and single-shot rifle being their idea of fun. As adults, they traveled the world in combat situations for the military. My dad was the biggest, baddest, bravest man I know. My uncle wasn't far behind him. So the thing that scared me the most was turning to see these two men in the middle of this creature screaming and seeing the fear on their faces. They didn't lose their composure for long. My uncle said it must have been a panther that followed us out of the woods. My dad agreed and said we needed to go inside out of the cold. Looking back on it now, I don't believe either one of them believed that was a panther, but they weren't going to tell a 10-year-old boy that monsters are real and one just followed you home. I'll never forget the fear I felt seeing these two men afraid. We never saw what was screaming at us, but we got the message loud and clear. And for the rest of the week, while we stayed and visited family, nobody else went hunting into the woods. I hope this helps somebody with a similar experience know that they are not alone. Thank you, Steve, for bringing all of us together and giving us a platform to share the truth, our truth. Signed, Big Mark. Big Mark, I did read that a while back, and I got no problems doubling up. It's just the way it is, you guys. Losing those 2,500 emails really messed me up, so we're just going to have to bear through it together. There's nothing I can do about it. As I find emails marked as unread. Now, also I have another folder. I got so many folders. I have my downloads, with your iPhone, the downloads folder. I don't know how many times I've opened up emails and hit a download button, and then it says view or download. And I hit view, it always shows up as broken. And then I got to go into my downloads, and sometimes I get lucky, and the downloads file, when I hit it, it'll open it. And a lot of people have sent me a PDF. Found some of those today as well. So here's one of them. Hello, Steve. You can call me Woody. And this will run long, very long. 4,000 words, 6 pages, and 25 years long. Wow. Doesn't seem to be too bad. I'm going in. I'll try to put breaks between Florida and the mountains. The motivation came from a Zoom call on Christmas with my sons. It has taken me several weeks, losing it in various forms of completion, trying to write it in my antique email, and then breaking down and doing it in a Word program. On that call, this subject came up. One of the sons that was with me, when we heard something yowl that was unexplainable, told me, and them at the time said, "No, Dad, that was just a gibbon." This made me understand how time can skew things, especially when someone is young, when they experience it. So what I feel I need to do is get them written down before the decades skew them even more. There are many experiences where I have bumped into these things so far, most in the mountains. One of them being where I had a spotlight and a rifle on it. They, he, she, whatever. These encounters run the gambit of the senses except smell. The most pronounced was a rather large log through my windshield on a remote private road in the mountains. The first two were in the late 90s in a canal that is the boundary between Everglades National Park and the South Glades Wildlife Management Area. When the wind was blowing too hard to get out in the ocean, it was our favorite fishing spot for bass, peacock bass, and snook. My two youngest sons and I were using the electric motor and casting to the lily pads and snags when from the large cypress heard a very loud yowl that now my civil engineer son said was a gibbon. It was very loud, really loud, and very long, and was definitely not a gibbon, but was ape-like. At first it did start like a gibbon, a whoop, 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 into a louder, tailing, bovine ooh, with a guttural sound at the end like a bull makes in the rut. It wasn't any monkey I've ever heard, and I've heard a lot, seeing how several thousand got loose from the Mannheimer Research Facility during Hurricane Andrew in '92. No shit, I didn't know that. It was also unlikely any single noise I've heard any critter make before or since. Just after it finished, both my sons said in near unison that they wanted to go home. Now, Dad. Fast forward about a month later, and a friend of mine launched my boat on the same canal at 23:30 hours. I get to work at 2300 hours and ran to the opposite end with the outboard motor, and we were slow trolling live bait back to the ramp with the electric motor. Since we're the only ones in the canal and we're only going to make one pass, we didn't feel the need for a spotlight because we both knew the canal very well, so we only had a couple of not so bright headlights to just aid in landing fish. And just after the moon set around 0100, it was like someone turned the audio in the glades off. No frogs croaking, no gators grunting, no crickets, or any of the other preloaded sounds the glades have at night, which, trust me, are a lot. No doubt. Dead quiet except for the whir of the Minn Kota. That's their outboard. Then, from the high side of the canal to our east, where the water management road is, and nothing for 10 miles but sawgrass, interspread with scrub cypress, oak, and the decades-empty Aerojet complex, something jumped in the canal. Something very large, like refrigerator large, and it was less than 100 yards from us and swimming to the same cypress I had heard the yowl come from. And when I say swam, I mean like a human swims. A very audible arm-over-arm stroke like humans do, but it only took 3 strokes to get across the canal. 100 feet wide, 30-plus yards past midnight with no moon, in water with some very large gators in it, toward the vastness of the Everglades National Park. It only took 3 strokes to cover the distance. Splash, splash, splash. Some rustling in the cypress, and gone. At that point, my fearless 6'4" buddy looked at me and said, "Did you bring your pistol?" I responded, "No." I asked him the same, and he said no. Then he said nearly the same thing my son said to me. "Let's go home now." End of Florida events. Fast forward a few years, I started taking the 2 remaining sons hunting to the mountains of western North Carolina, compliments of a fishing buddy that moved there. The other 2 were pursuing their lives, going to college and raising families by then. When the last 2 follow suit, I completely trade fishing, any and every body of water, and get near for a equal passion of hunting. The best part was my wife of 35 years so loved the area I started hunting in, we bought a cabin there in the middle of a large national forest. a mile as the crow flies to the Appalachian Trail, and on the other side, another equally large national forest. The best part was it set us back the same amount a new 30-foot open fisherman would have. Everything went very smoothly for the first 4 years we owned it. There was one night in the first year where I thought I'd do the old wood knocking thing while my wife and I were enjoying a nice summer evening on the porch. I really didn't take this subject really seriously then/yet. That's until something started knocking back. We still just blew it off with someone down the holler messing with us. Seems we were wrong. On another occasion, one of my sons did hear what he described as someone mumbling outside the guest room window late one night. Still nothing to worry about. This place is fantastic, although that son refuses to sleep on the first floor to this day. Will not leave to hunt before daylight anymore. Bought a semi-auto 308 that has a 20-round magazine to hunt with and carries a pistol too. Now to the meat of my experiences and the most potentially lethal. December 2016, one of my sons and I had been at the cabin for 2 days and had 2 deer hanging. On the second evening, he and I had an argument and he left. I continued to hunt and had 2 more deer hanging by the 5th day and 1 in the Jeep. On that evening, all hell broke loose for me on the private gated road to the cabin. It also made me lose any doubt on this subject. I was coming back from the store that was 20 miles away. 3 of those miles being gravel forestry road, and the last mile private road owned by us, land/homeowners. The stretch it happened on is our gravel community road that accessed 30 homes on over 1,000 acres. I just rounded the last real curve onto a fairly flat stretch, and to my left was a 1 to 3 slope with steeper areas covered with poplar, birch, pine, and patches of laurel thicket covering it. On the left, a sheer 20-foot drop with young poplar trees lining it with circumferences no bigger than 10 inches. And in an instant, the windshield in front of me exploded. Being it was past 9 p.m., the temperature was 20 degrees Fahrenheit. No moon, the gate was closed because I had to open it, and this time of year only half the houses were occupied. My only thought was I was being attacked by people that were meaning to do very bad things to me. Since I couldn't run, I figured it was time to fight, and I was going to use everything I had at hand to make this as unfair as possible. If they were going to chuck things at me, I felt it more than fair to chuck stuff back, and much smaller and at much speed. So I got out with the indirect light from the headlights of my beater Grand Cherokee that indirectly lit up the thicket, and I figured the thing in my windshield must have come from, and I started laying cover fire from my pistol so I could get the .444 Bear rifle I kept on the back floor, hoping that whoever it was would flee when they realized I was not going to be an easy victim. Just as the slide locked back, I had the rear passenger door open and retrieved the rifle. Got it out, charged it, and then laid the pistol on the roof. Using the roof as a rest, I realized I had 2 more problems. My ears were ringing, and the night blindness from the muzzle flashes of my pistol made the ambient light dimmer in the new moonlight. And after what seemed like an hour, but was probably less than a minute, straining to see or hear anything up that slope, I realized the pistol was empty and the rifle only held 4 rounds, with 4 more on the stock bandolier. I did, however, have another magazine in the glove compartment. So with one eye on the slope, I opened the passenger door. This is when the full levity of my situation came fully into view. My driver's door, when opened on this beater Jeep, didn't turn the interior light on, but the passenger side did. There, embedded in the crotch of the passenger seat, was a log as big around as a coffee can, with the other end sticking out a hole that was 18 inches from my face 2 minutes ago. Picture included. Holy shit, I read this a long time ago too. I remember this one now, and the photo. Then it hit me like a train. It made me into a solid believer in things that can't be explained. There is no way a man or even a gang of men could have thrown that. There are also no trees here that it could have possibly dead fell from. Something just threw a log too big for any fireplace like a javelin at me on purpose. Then I just shot 17 bullets at it that we are trained only to use, only to get, sorry, that we are trained to only use, only to get to a rifle. And I now have a rifle that seems barely adequate. So I did the only thing that I could do. I dropped the magazine out of what I knew now was just another noisemaker, put a fresh one in, then slipped back around the Jeep, and with my head stuck out the window with my barrel of the bear rifle rested on the door, I finished my drive to the cabin. Excuse me. The next 2 nights were quite sporting, staying there alone, waiting for the windshield to be replaced. The days were quiet, but the nights were eerie, with the rocks and sticks bouncing off the siding and the roof. Sometimes at random, but it seemed as I would start drifting off, there would be some sort of crack or knock or tap or some noise that would snap me back awake. I would describe it as character building, and just how vulnerable a person can feel, even with what some would describe as an arsenal in there with me. Then there was the reality of I had my family's yearly venison supply of deer to skin and quarter. To add a little more sport to the mix, there is, by design, no cell or line phone service in our remote mountain getaway. To get a signal on my phone to hike up to a ridge on forestry land, so my calls were made quickly and hardware heavy. It is also not that easy to quarter out a deer with a 45-70 on your shoulder. My youngest son, I mentioned him earlier, the give and call expert, was also graduating from college in a few days, and I needed to be 500 miles south to attend. After this, I'm not willing to roll over and go away, so some upgrades were necessary. Different 4x4 with enough lights on it to light up a football field, upgraded hunting rifles along with lots and lots of practice with them, and with Magnum handguns. But let me continue, because this ain't done yet. Actually, I'm not sure it'll ever be done. It was also between these years I found your and Dave's channel, so I added a personal locator with text capability. My son had forgave me for my boorish behavior and went with me the next year without incident, with all the new goodies. The following year, though, I got to see the furry fornicator, but this time through a no magnification 4 MAO red dot sight on a coyote rifle. We'd been at my friend's house and had gotten back to the cabin around 2300 hours. My son had to go to the bathroom, and I grabbed a not real bright but adequate rechargeable incandescent spotlight to check a coyote bait we had 100 yards from the door and across the pond. Well, there wasn't a yote on the bait, but up the slope from the pond, and not far at all from where our driveway is, there was an eye glow. Not a red eye glow, but a defined pair of eyes glowing white. They were spread so far apart I thought it was 2 raccoons or possums in a tree. Problem, they were moving together and looking straight at me. They were also swaying slightly, where one would go out the return, like they were behind something. I raised the rifle, supported it with my forearm, and put the dot just below the eyes. The eyes were noticeably on either side of a dot that covers 4 inches at 100 yards, so whatever I was looking at had a spread between its eyes of at least 8 inches. Then something very odd happened. I felt peaceful. When I first saw the eye glow, I was trying to get my son to bring me one of the upgraded rifles. Then, after I lowered the less powerful but still upgraded varmint rifle, I felt no need for the superior heavy hardware. The rest of that trip went off without a hitch, but from that point on, I felt like we should leave the livers and the hearts inside the cores after cleaning the deer. Then the next year, my wife and dogs, a taller retriever and a 4 foot long, 20-inch tall, 100-pound Basset Lab mutt started coming up in, and more encounters happened. When you say these things scare dogs, you are correct. Some are more scared than others, though. From the first night there, the two of them knew some very different things were there, but they are suburb dogs and a bit naive. But now one of them is scared to death to go outside at night because he's seen it up close. Because of his naive nature and charging into things head first. When we first got there, he leapt from the truck and frolicked about like a wild dog. He loved the place. That was until he got a close look at Mr. Fuzzy. Now, when we go there, he tries to hide under the seat and has to be removed from the truck. If it's dark, he won't go outside unless he's on a lead. The first few days we were there with them was great for the taller retriever and the Bassador. They would be alert like a FedEx guy was coming up to the door at all hours of the night. I figured it was a deer, a bear, or some other critter their city dog selves weren't really familiar with. They really loved the snow, and seeing the Bassador bulldoze through it is great. Then one night they were going exceptionally nuts, so I let them out and followed them with a pistol and a headlight. The taller went blazing out the back door and around the corner of the cabin up to the edge of the slope where we had just that afternoon dumped 2 deer cores, liver and hearts inside and the gut separate. He thought Bai was on a mission to get whatever was invading his new. He thought he was on a mission to get whatever was invading his new playground. I rounded the corner of the cabin and get the light on him just in time to see him sliding to a stop at the edge of the drop where the carcasses were 10 feet below the edge of the creek. When I say slid, he braked so hard while at the same time trying to turn around, his front end didn't know where his back end was. At the same time, I heard something crashing through the laurels lining the creek bottom, and it was heading up the creek bed and up the mountain. The taller went past me and back into the cabin. Like it was a lake and he was on fire. Funny thing is, the Bassador just hung next to me with his head thrown back, sniffing like a good hound would. I eased to where the taller just did his acrobatic act with the Bassador at heel. I peered over, and not one but both deer cores were gone. The laurels going up the creek bottom looked like someone drove a small car through them. From that moment on, the taller would not go out after dark. For him, the new has wore off at the place when the sun goes down. Okay, so now we're winding down to 2020 on our way up. My dear friend who maintains the cabin calls me and says our 200-pound propane tank that we had filled the month before was empty. Not only was it empty, but the supply line going to the regulator on the outside of the cabin was pulled out of the fitting. To top it off, the tank's valve was turned off at the tank. My 40-year career in the domestic water treatment and distribution has made me quite familiar with every sort of connecting device used to connect 2 hollow tubes together. From 1/4-inch flared copper control lines to 36-inch mechanical joints, I'm very acquainted with. He said it looked like someone yanked the gas line out of the regulator and the tank was empty. So I called the gas company. $500 later, I had gas, and they checked for internal leaks. There was none. The technician had no opinion on how the line was yanked out, but when I arrived, my buddy came up and we looked things over, and I kid you not, something did pull the 6-foot-long, 3/8-inch flared soft copper line that went from the tank to the regulator out of it with such force it pulled the flare straight. It did this without pulling the regulator off the cabin siding and without kinking the line. Whatever did it then had to have the wherewithal to open the tank's valve after yanking the line out and then close it after the tank was emptied. It also had to support the regulator on the side of the cabin that was only attached with some small wood screws. When I went to the gas company to ask them about it, their response was quite interesting. I had the fitting and the pictures in hand and worked my way up the chain to Mr. Gasco guy himself. It's a small town and I won't mention them by name. And when I asked him directly what he thought did this, a bear, a vandal, and before I could get anything else out, he said, "Ewans have that place up on Blank Creek, right? Might be a Sasquatch." He then walked off, and the receptionist just gave me a shrug. And well, that's about it. That was until 3 weeks ago I got a call from my buddy up there. He and his sons were going to go up there for some guy time. When he went up to light the pilot light on the heater, it wouldn't light. Lo and behold, the gas tank was empty again. Everything intact this time, but he said the valve was off and the only thing on the camera watching the back sides in front of the cabin were deer, bears, and a turkey or two. This game playing is getting old and expensive. I'm starting to understand how we got the place for 30 cents on the dollar and why the fellow we bought it from was wearing a pistol when we hiked the property. He only left the place with what he could carry in a Jeep Liberty, and even left his border collie. My friends there adopted him, and he lived the rest of his life at their house 7 miles away. Another thing, that once they got it to their house, it never tried to go back up to the cabin, and wouldn't get out of the truck when they took him up there. Wow, this is like a horror movie, right? I will not let this critter run me off. I'll not be intimidated by it. I've worked through, cleaned up after, and rebuilt our home when needed after every category hurricane the weather services has. Duplicates on a few. I could list the rest of the hard lesson life events, but this is approaching 4,000 words and would be moot. Just want to have my place in the world, and they can have theirs. I won't take any more game than I need for my family, and I will keep feeding those that remain in the lean winter months. Now, though, my grandson and granddaughters will be coming up there, spending time hiking, hunting, fishing, chopping wood, learning to garden, and all the other skills that are dying in our country. And I will be damned if I'll let them take that from me. I don't want to start a fight with them, but if they push me to it, I'm very well prepared to give as good as I get. Oh, and my wife's no pushover either. She is also a firm believer now. She served on a mobile nuclear missile crew long ago in West Germany, and I'm sure she would have zero patience if she felt one of her grandbabies were threatened. Oh yeah, any female. Right? Any female. Same boat. Look out. I had sent snippets of these events to others in social media and posted in forums where I was more naive about this subject. Even been contacted by some, quote, researchers, end quote, and entertained thoughts of inviting them up. Fortunately, I got bad first impressions and never gave my place's exact location. Then when I found your channel and started looking into the subject further, I fully understand remaining anonymous and keeping my place as paramount. Sincerely, I'll just say your first names, Mark and Linda. Homestead, Florida, and just say North Carolina. And there you go. Now, this was shared. I don't remember how long this email was, but I remember the Jeep. So give me a few minutes and I'll dig into my emails and see if I can find. Oh, no, there's no email here. Really? Oh, there's an email. All right, give me a minute. I'm gonna find that photo. Hopefully. All right, found those photos. Posting it again, and I'll bet you, since I shared that email, I would imagine there is probably, I don't know, 250,000 new subscribers to this channel. So, worthy of my time. If it upsets you, you're probably here for the wrong reasons. Now, excuse me, I'm going to read one more. Hold on a minute. Where are we here? This is titled, Is there such thing as a long hair bear in the southwest U.S.? A long hair bear. Oops. That's the cordless mic. Some creature jumped in front of my car one night out in New Mexico. It was loping along in the beams of my headlights for about 3 miles, seeming to want to stay there. What? I thought it was some crazy bear, and I never saw the face, so I wasn't terrified. But it had really long hair on its feet. Wait, I mean paws. But what I remember is feet. No tail at all. It was not standing upright. It seemed to be playing with the headlight beams. The speed was about 50. Its back was about the same height as my car hood. Was thinking black bear, but that doesn't quite fit, does it? Long, very dark hair in summer, loping in a crouch for 3 miles at 50 miles per hour. When I slowed to 35, ruining its fun, it ran off the road and disappeared into the scrub forest. The more I listen to stories you post, the more I realize I am not the scary thing in the dark, as I have always supposed. Jan or Yan? Jan. Wow. You imagine if this person had a dash cam for that? 50? The height of the hood? Feet and long hair. And how many people would wake up in the morning? We said so many times, oh, what should I make up today? Right? Holy shit. That's a holy shit for anybody. What the hell, right? All right, one more short one. Then I gotta go. We get up at 5 in the morning here, by the way, if you're very curious about what time we get up, what we do in a day, and what time we leave to do shit. Hi, my name is James from North Carolina. I, too, have had the same experience. Okay, wait a minute. What's this titled? Responding to Jason, who got terrified in a tree stand. I was sitting in the woods one day, during the daytime, sitting up against a tree, and out of nowhere, I had fear come over me so strong, coming from the left of me, that I felt like jumping up and running for my life because I felt I was about to die. I was so scared that I was afraid to move, and the fear was so strong that I held my breath to be quiet, so whatever it was wouldn't hear me. As I sit there, about to shit myself, I could feel deep in my soul that it came from my left and crossed feet within front of me, moving to the right, but I never heard or seen nothing. And within what seemed to be a lifetime, mainly 5 minutes or so, the feeling started to fade, and when I got myself together thinking what in the hell just happened, I hauled ass and got out of there. I've never been back to that spot. Jason, I feel your pain. As Steve read your story, I too was called crazy and told I had a panic attack. But I know what a panic attack feels like, and it wasn't that for sure. I'll never be able to explain that, but no, you're not alone, and you aren't crazy. Stay safe, Jason, and thanks, Steve, for what you do. All right. There you go. I hope Jason's here and heard that one. Explain that. Whoops. Explain that one, right, you guys? How do you detect terror in your soul coming from a direction without seeing anything or hearing anything? That throws the puzzle piece placement off a little bit, don't you think? Makes shit a little more, it's quite confusing. To me, it's quite confusing as you try to figure out exactly what they are doing, how they're doing it, and whose feelings are feeling that. Is it them imposing their feelings on us, or them intentionally warning us, or is it our soul warning ourselves? Right? And why? Why? Why even bother with us simple humans? We can easily go the other way and not even inflict the dread or terror on somebody. Why bother? I just don't understand why the bother. One thing I do understand is we are absolutely manipulated and lied to intentionally, and these truths that we talk about openly and freely here would crack open so frickin' much. It would annihilate the control that's imposed on us globally right now. It would annihilate it. Guaranteed. If these truths that we talk about freely here were openly, publicly acknowledged, then people would really dig and we'd figure shit out. And most, worst of all, for the people who are, whoever it is controls us, we would figure our own shit out and figure out who we really are and what we really can do. That's why our skills, our knowledge is limited. That's why. And that's why we're not being taught these truths publicly, mainstream education system, right? That's why. That is why. 110% why. It's got shit to do with camping, supplies being sold, or timber. No way. You have to at least I would imagine many people agree with me after what we've been hearing from all the people here. Right? It's very easy to see at this stage of the game, this has nothing to do with forestry money or camping money or sales of camping equipment. Nothing. Nope. Anyway, there you go. Keep the wheels spinning. Keep talking about the truth openly. Keep sharing true knowledge with the people that are close to you. Don't let it slip any further away, right? And hopefully, I'll be back tomorrow. On a side note, where the man emailed in with the recording, I'm going to be going there fairly soon. So I just might get a hold of that guy and go up and take him up on that offer to go have coffee or something, hang out, and see what's new. See what's new. Then I'm going to go get some trail cameras and place some new ones where I'm after this huge blacktail buck for this fall. And carry on. So, share my story at howtohunt.com. Get your truth shared here. Book it at howtohunt.com if you want to come and BS with me for a day or two and catch some salmon halibut. Sarah Stora's sale is still on until midnight, I think. The discount code is HUNT20. Hunt with the word, or with number 20, HUNT20. I'll be back tomorrow. Happy Father's Day again, you guys. Later.